Welcome to Lesson 9 for Unit B.2. My name's Daniel in DC, and I'm a science teacher who uses OpenSciEd in my classroom. In Lesson 9, we are diving into a 2-day lesson that frames a core question for our students. What are the global effects of increased carbon dioxide from fires? Let's begin by taking a look at where we've come from this unit to get us here in Lesson 9. If we look back at Lesson 8, we see where students figured out that adding carbon dioxide to a system increases its temperature compared to a system without adding carbon dioxide. They looked at real-world data showing that global carbon dioxide and temperatures are rising together over time. In this lesson, we build on that by wondering how this increase in carbon dioxide, specifically from burning carbon sinks, impacts other interconnected Earth's systems globally. Let's take a look at the structural design of Lesson 9, which is a 2-day lesson designed as an investigation and a putting pieces together lesson type. It requires about 20 minutes of preparation time, features a hands-on simulation, and requires students to have internet-connected devices to access data tracking spreadsheets. There are no additional videos to worry about managing for this lesson. Taking a look at the overall design of the lesson, we can see that it is split into 2 distinct sense-making loops. Loop 1 spans parts 1 through 5, where students will focus on simulating global carbon and energy flow, and the second loop is where they will shift to modeling the global feedback effects of those energy and matter flows. Our first sense-making loop, students participate in a quantitative simulation where they act as individual carbon atoms moving through Earth's atmosphere, ocean, biosphere, and geosphere by rolling dice to determine their paths. Through this, they figure out that carbon dioxide and carbon in general, along with energy, move together through these interconnected systems, with carbon spending the vast majority of its time in the atmosphere and biosphere. This naturally leads them to wonder about the global effects when carbon from fires builds up in these specific areas. For the second sense-making loop, students collaborate in small groups to brainstorm a gotta-have-it checklist and then participate in a scientist circle to build a consensus model. They figure out that increased carbon dioxide causes higher temperatures, which lead to drought, resulting in more wildfires that release even more carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. This loop concludes with students wondering how we can actively help manage matter and energy in a fire system to help stop the fires. By the end of these 2 days, the class establishes that Earth is made of interacting subsystems, that energy and matter flow through, and that carbon visits the atmosphere most frequently. They also construct an understanding of a positive feedback effect. Higher heat causes more drought, which leads to more fires, releasing more CO2 and accelerating climate change. Now let's take a closer look at 3 key instructional moments that happen during this lesson. In part 2, students spend time brainstorming initial ideas about Earth's systems. Physically, they are talking in small groups, sharing their thoughts, and looking at prompt slides that connect different components of the planet. I found this moment to be helpful because it gives students a supportive space to voice and connect partial understandings about the geosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere, and biosphere that they developed back in middle school. When facilitating this, my goal is to capture all ideas on the board, whether they are completely accurate or not, to build excitement and encourage student-to-student talk rather than evaluating answers right away. During part 4, students transition away from tracking their individual dice rolls to analyzing automated spreadsheet data and graphs as a whole class. They sit together looking at the collective data patterns, realizing that carbon visits the atmosphere most frequently and that atoms rearrange themselves as energy flows. This matters because it shifts students from tracking a single atom to identifying macro-level global trends. When I teach this, I make sure to push students for evidence by having them link their spreadsheets findings directly to their conclusions, specifically asking where carbon spent the most time to set up the problem of atmospheric buildup. During part 9, the class gathers together in a scientist circle to co-construct a consensus model on chart paper or on the board. Students look at their group checklist, negotiate how different processes connect, and try to link micro-level ecosystems and global-scale carbon cycling. This is the synthesis moment where they map out the self-reinforcing cycle of rising CO2 higher temperatures, drought, and fires. I highly recommend letting the class struggle a bit to interpret the model on their own. I listen carefully for students to describe this continuous loop of cause and effect in their own words before I formally introduce them to the term of feedback effects. With the feedback loop established, students naturally shift to looking for entry points to solve the problem, wondering how to reduce the burning of carbon sinks and interrupt the cycle. This sets up Lesson 10, where they will investigate case studies of successful fire management techniques to see how they impact energy and matter flow. Now let's go over a few practical classroom tested logistics and management strategies that can help your classroom run smoothly during these activities. When preparing for the quantitative simulation, I make sure to print out the 7 location cards ahead of time and strategically station them around the room to create an intuitive flow. Here is an insider trick that serves a lot of classroom headache. I always set up multiple physical stations for both the atmosphere and the producer cards. Because of the specific mathematical probabilities built into this model, students naturally spend the vast majority of their time at these 2 locations. And doubling up the physical space completely prevents overcrowding and long lines. Also, tech issues are bound to happen. So I always keep a hard copy stack of the carbon energy data from the quantitative model handout ready as a backup, just in case the school internet goes down or the student devices are not charged. While students are collaborating in their small groups on the Gotta Have It checklist, I found it incredibly helpful to carry a clipboard around the room to keep track of which students I've actually heard from. This simple management move ensures that I actively capture individual student understanding and progress before they ever transition to any independent assessment later on. If you notice a group is completely stuck or staring at a blank page, try to avoid just giving them the answers. Instead, I use a couple of targeted open-ended prompts to get them re-engaged. Asking things like, where does the energy come from to move the carbon? Or how long does carbon stay in that system? Usually gives them just enough direction to start self-correcting and writing again. When we are co-constructing the complex consensus model together as a class, using color coding on the board is an excellent tool to make the distinct pathways of matter and energy visually clear. However, to make sure model is fully accessible for any colorblind students, I make it a rule to always pair my color choices with letters or numbers next to the lines. When picking out markers or digital fonts, I recommend sticking to a high contrast palette like orange, blue, black, or dark brown so that every single student can clearly follow the loops from their seats. For our student glossaries in this lesson, students encounter the terms geosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere, and you may want to add these to the glossary with some simple images for support. The co-constructed terms we want them to formally add are carbon cycle and feedback effects. I find it best to define these terms explicitly only after the class has co-created a shared understanding during the consensus discussion, rather than front-loading them ahead of time. In terms of anchor charts, you'll want to resurface your community agreements and related phenomenon poster, along with the driving question board. You'll create and keep the new class consensus model for global carbon cycling, and the small group Gotta Have a checklist can be discarded after that activity, and you'll save the updated driving question board for future lessons. That brings us to the end of our preparation guide for Lesson 9. Your students will wrap up these 2 days with a clear model of how carbon and energy cycle globally through feedback loops, positioning them well to explore fire management solutions in Lesson 10. Thank you for your time. You got this.